I'm Jillian Rogerson, the managing editor at Second Story Press. Today, I'm talking to the mother and daughter duo behind our book, When Mom's Away, the story of a little girl and how she copes when her mom, a busy doctor, has to be at work during the COVID-19 pandemic. The author, Layla Ahmad, was born in Toronto and spent her childhood in New Jersey. She's been a voracious reader and writer since she could wield a pencil, which shaped her love of storytelling. She wants to write for those who feel unseen. Layla loves consuming all forms of media, cooking different pasta sauces, and feels best understood by her dog, Pippa.
That is true.
Her mom, the illustrator Farida Zaman, has a passion for art and design. And in her 20 years as a freelance illustrator, she's worked in Europe, North America, and the Middle East, with clients all across the world. Farida is married and lives in Toronto, where she has her friends, her family, and her art studio. Welcome, Layla and Farida. First of all, I have some questions for both of you. With picture books, sometimes the artist is the writer and illustrator, and other times it's a collaboration. So did you begin this project together?
Do you want me first? So I think in this case, I'll go first. So in this case, I wrote the story first and then kind of brought it to Farida / my mother and kind of got her. It was great to have her as a sounding board for this. And then she really, because obviously of her medium and her profession, she was really able to kind of bring it to life and give it that new dimension. But it was something that kind of became a collaboration.
So Farida, how did you feel when Layla said, "I've written a book. Do you want to work on it with me?"
I was very excited because I've always been behind her, sort of inspiring her to write more and more. Because I knew from a very young age, when Layla was like 5 or 6 years old, that she would be, very good at writing, creative writing. And so I was excited. I thought, oh, this is what a perfect opportunity.
It's such a lovely story too. And it takes place at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And can you talk about what changed while you were working on it? Because I'm sure you must have started this right at the beginning last year.
Yeah. So I think that something that we can speak to as far as changing the story was it started in one draft. So it was one story. I think by the end, there were quite a few changes because as far as writing scenes that have to do with kids learning in school, virtual learning, in school learning, things have changed a lot and continue to change a lot. So I know some people don't really like the word, but pivoting definitely was something we had to rely on a lot to change what was happening in real life and kind of mirror those realistic scenarios.
So were you two quarantining, staying together in the same place during the pandemic, or did you have to work remotely together?
We were quarantining together, which made our working process kind of a lot more streamlined, I would say.
So did you find that you were talking about the book at breakfast, or did you have like a certain amount of time during the day when you would work on it?
Layla or myself? Well, I think we were talking about we were so inspired by everything around us. It was just, the process was so natural. We didn't have to go very far for inspiration because we just switched the TV on. So we kind of kept up with the ever-changing kind of dynamic of the whole, the pandemic.
So was there anything that you learned about each other that you didn't know from working together?
Honestly, I watched my mom work since before I can even remember. So I feel like it's almost a natural osmosis to kind of like almost like join the flow. But it was really cool to kind of watch the master at work and kind of be part of the process. I think that was really cool, was kind of being able to join in almost. That was something that was new for me. So it was very cool. Yeah, it was different.
Farida, did you learn anything about Layla?
What did I learn about Layla? That she's very very good at taking like sort of criticism, for example, not criticism per se, but, she was open to change, which was great, actually, because sometimes authors are not so open to change. And I thought, because we're so closely related, there might be a problem. But we actually worked very, very well in tandem, for sure.
And I think, this story from the first draft that I saw at the very beginning, it didn't change that much to the end, except the bits that you mentioned about, will kids be in school online? Will they not? What's it going to be like in another year? Mm-hmm. So when children read this book, what do you hope they'll feel when they open this book, when they read the book?
I think that's something that, from what I've heard, like the feedback from kids and parents and adults and that kind of like educators, what I'm hoping that they get is a sense of relief, but more so, I guess, hope, because I feel like at the beginning, and even like obviously sometimes now, there can be a little bit of hopelessness, and it's better to kind of give kids a sense of like explanation, and in a world that sometimes doesn't really explain things to them so crystal clear, give some kind of a sense and a path as to like what can happen, what is happening, and kind of explain things to them. Because sometimes I feel like in the grand equation, kids don't always have things explained to them in the ways that maybe adults do, especially I think with the pandemic, there was a lot of like in-betweens and grays. And I think that the book maybe provides a bit of hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Farida, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think the illustrations are quite friendly, mm-hmm. and they're gentle and whimsical. And so I think it kind of takes some of the hopefully lifts the fear a little and opens up the curiosity element in a child. And I'm hoping that the child also feels secure and comfortable in this new sort of reality. Hoping it's not going to be forever, and obviously not, it won't be. But it's just sort of a learning experience, it's and the possibilities within the limitations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So, Farida, when you illustrate a book, how do you begin? Tell us about how you work, how you begin to work on a book.
Well, firstly, I'll read the manuscript and let it soak it in for a while, maybe even a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And then, I start thinking about the character, the protagonist. What'll she be like? What's her personality? And so I start sketching her, and then gradually start sketching her family, and start kind of like looking for references mm-hmm. that match up with this image that I have of her in my head or him in my head. And that's how it starts. And I start looking for, start establishing her home as well. What kind of home does this little child live in? So it's a lot of sketching, a lot of preliminary kind of doodling.
Yeah, the background and the decor and stuff like that in this book is so lovely as well.
Yeah, it's important to have that, right? A sense of kind of home. Uh-huh. And, something that a child can relate to as well, right?
And when you're drawing your characters, do you base them on people that you've seen or people you know, or do they just come out of your head?
A lot of people have seen the book and have asked me, is that inspired by Layla when she was little? And Layla would have her hair kind of up like that when she was little. So yes, that definitely is, I'd say. We have a little dog as well. So I pulled the dog into the book, and my husband wears glasses. So I guess, there are little kind of similarities here and there.
So did you have to do any research when you were drawing it, or?
Oh yeah. I did a fair amount of research. I wanted to understand, things about COVID as well. Mm-hmm. And the mom's a doctor, sort of housing her in a garage. How would that work? So I looked for a lot of reference online about, doctors quarantining or living in their garages while the family lived inside the house. and how would you kind of decorate a space like that. Because I didn't have to go far. I didn't really have to go out of the house so much, apart from one scene when the little girl and the father goes up to the grandparents.
Mhm.
So it was really kind of like contained, but I did some research and dug around for reference. Yes.
And when people imagine an artist or illustrating a book, they imagine paint and canvas or pen and ink and paper. How do you work?
I started my career as a very traditional artist, working with watercolors, period.
Oh.
Watercolors and some ink. And gradually that sort of morphed into watercolors and some acrylics. And today, I'm computer literate, like most illustrators are, I guess. And so I will kind of work a little bit. I'll take pieces I do by hand, and then take it into Photoshop. But this particular book was pretty much all done on a new medium that I taught myself over the past 18 months on called Procreate on my iPad, and then later on, transferring it into Photoshop. The little bits and pieces that were done by hand, though. All the outline, the drawing was done by hand, but the texture and everything, I was very pleased with the result, actually. Yes.
So you draw it by hand and then you scan it onto your iPad?
Yeah, so I scan it into my computer and then I import it into my iPad and I color it. And sometimes I'll do layers on my iPad, take it into Photoshop, and then play around with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's complicated. So how did you get started illustrating children's books? I know you do a lot of other kinds of illustration as well.
Yes, no, I started doing actually my career. When I started my career in England, I started working in the children's industry, working with educational publishing houses like Oxford University Press. I did a couple of picture books there as well, and so I kind of started my work career doing children's picture books and editorial. And then once I moved to Canada, I did my first Canadian picture book. A while ago. It ages me.
What's your favorite thing about your job?
The freedom, the freedom, the opportunities. It never bores me. It never bores me. I mean, I can do. You can make magic. Really, it's so wonderful, and it's a behind the scenes kind of job.
Mm-hmm.
But you can, it's just the world is your oyster, and if you have the tenacity and the curiosity and the excitement, then you can keep going.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a job you can do anywhere,
forever and ever. I love
forever.
it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Well, I love your work.
Well,
and Layla, this is your first book. You're just at the beginning of your probably long writing career. So what inspired you to write this particular book?
So I am always writing. It's like I have a million different pots cooking at all time. So like crazy. So I was already kind of percolating a story about a mother and a daughter. And then obviously things kind of changed around us kind of globally. And I kind of was like, you know what, I should probably change the story to be more appropriate to what is going on in the outside world. And through and through, I think as things kind of changed, I think it was like within a month, this story just kind of was born from watching both the pandemic and also because I was kind of seeing kids I knew kind of directly affected by the pandemic. I think it was literally, I had been babysitting these kids, kind of hanging out with them, and then they couldn't go to school anymore. And that kind of set off a switch in my head. And that's kind of where the story kind of was ideated from.
So what made you think of making it about a doctor and her daughter?
I think because On the news, there might have been I'm trying to think back to last year. They were saying that like doctors couldn't really see their children because they could carry the virus possibly to their families. And I think the thought in itself was just so horrifying because initially we didn't really know much about what was going to be happening. So that was just something I thought would, like, how do you explain that to a child is kind of what I was thinking, because it's so confusing. It's such a concept, an abstract concept to a child. So that's kind of where the story was born from.
And did it change much from the beginning of the pandemic to when it was finally in the final draft? Can you talk a bit about that? Because you're obviously trying to keep up with things.
Yeah, so I think that the craziest part was there was a lot of to and froing between kids going to school in person and learning virtually. So that was the biggest change. And then also there was a lot of banging pots in real life and not, which I know that now we may not, bang pots as much in person anymore, but there was a big symbolic move to do that, to thank our healthcare workers. So that was a big thing to include in the book as well. But most of it was tethered around kids' education and kind of how they were learning. But I would say that was probably the biggest change, coupled with just kind of being on the fly, and kind of, it was almost a thing where daily I would keep my eyes on the news to say, like, does it need to be incorporated to the book? Like, should this go into the next draft? Like, do we have to change anything? And when you have a story that's so closely tethered to what's going on in the world, you really need to kind of keep on your toes.
So when you write a story, do you have it plotted out from the beginning, or do your characters tell you where the story's going to go?
So I am an aspirational plotter.
Okay. Tell us what that means.
Yes, I aspire to plot out my stories. Like I've seen amazing, great, iconic writers who like have their middle and their end and everything all plotted out. I have these like grand ideas where like I think the characters can do this, and I think the story will just like come to life via my mind. So I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantser, which is the opposite of a plotter, where you go by the seat of your pants. I'm not proud of it. I know there are people who are amazing pantsers. I am like a flying pantser. So yeah,
Since you don't have, Post-it notes all over the wall in one room or anything, where's your favorite place to write? Where do you like to write?
So my favorite places to write previously, I used to sometimes go to my local Toronto Public Library. This is a while ago. I love coffee shops. Now I'm a big fan of kind of writing anywhere I can get good sunlight, even if it's like winter, summer. I'm a big fan of like natural sunlight, and either quiet, or if I can't get quiet, I'll take a white noise machine. I'm a pretty simple writer when it comes to that. I just need like quiet sunlight. If I can't get a library branch, then that's pretty much.
You use a white noise machine, really?
That's a little bit kooky. Yeah, that's crazy.
And do you write in a notebook or with a computer? What's your tool?
All my notes go in a notebook or my phone. I also keep a notes app. So I have a notes app, a notebook, and then all my writing my actual stories are in my laptop.
So you obviously you have a lot of stories running around in your head.
Yeah.
And so this one was just particularly timely. Was that why you decided to do this particular story, or did you have a friend who was a doctor? Or
I have quite surprisingly a few friends who are doctors. Like, you never realize how many doctors you know until you come out with a doctor story. I was thinking of it. I was like, wow, I know a lot of doctors.
My dad's one too.
Another doctor. But the story was particularly it was also very timely as well, because I kind of wrote it, and then obviously both me and my mom kind of collaborated on it, and then it was kind of at the time kind of was intersected with the moment. So that kind of happened to work with, I guess at the time I finished it, it was kind of like it worked itself into the pandemic at the time.
And these have been just such strange, scary times for everybody. And I think one thing that children perhaps we'll get from this book is to maybe not be so afraid. And the little girl does things in the book so that she's less afraid. She can talk to her mom on FaceTime, and she helps other people, and she shops for her grandparents, for the neighbors, all those things. She claps and bangs pots and pans for the healthcare workers. And did you find, have you found the pandemic frightening at all? Are there things that you've done to help feel a bit less kind of stressed by these strange times?
Would you like to answer this? Do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, it's been kind of like going up and down a hill, really, and sometimes climbing a mountain as well in my head. It's been very, good things have happened during this time as well, I have to say. Just, like through our work, Layla and the book came out, and I had another book that came out last year as well. 2 books in one pandemic, very interesting. But it has been it's had its moments. But the strange thing is, I think me and a lot of other people are kind of used to this lifestyle now, right? And once things kind of loosen up, it'll be a different story. So, yeah.
It's going to be a shock to our system when we can be outside eating dinner again.
Yeah, really.
Layla, did you have any particular strategies to get through this strange time?
I feel like at this point, because the novelty of I feel like at the beginning there were a lot of Zoom game nights and, trivia nights. I think that everyone might be a little bit worn out from that kind of thing. But the old, helping each other never gets old. Community building doesn't get old, So, in the story, the little girl helps her neighbors and her grandparents. So helping people is something you never burn out from. You can always lean on your friends, and it's always important to check in with people if you feel so you haven't heard from someone in a long time, probably best to check in on them. So those kind of things I feel are the best strategies for getting through times like this. I know sometimes people kind of want to be left alone, but I think it's always best to kind of just stay connected with each other. And that's from someone who really did kind of burn out from Zoom early on.
And you've had a chance to share the book with some classrooms online as well. Tell me about that.
Okay, that was awesome. I think the first classroom that I virtually went to, I was more excited than they were. Definitely, I came in it was super exciting. During my Q&A period with them, they mostly asked me what my favorite kind of ice cream was, and I was more than happy to indulge and answer the same question a bunch of times. It was great. What
is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I am hopeful towards cookie dough, but they were disappointed. They wanted me to say mint, but next time. So I've read it now to 1 classroom, and I have a few more coming up. And I really have found that it doesn't really matter there's certain age groups, but it's a story that relates to a lot of different grades, because the classroom I read it to is actually a few different grades put together. And the feedback I got was that many different ages, but they all really related to and enjoyed the story. So. Oh,
that's lovely. Yeah. And Farida, have you done any classroom visits or anything with your work this year?
Not for this book. No, I haven't, not yet. I think, hopefully something will come up. But
I know you have done some social media readings and stuff for some of your books.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's a fun thing to do.
No, it is. It's nice to engage. Absolutely.
And Layla, do you read stories to your dog as well? To Pippa?
I do. I will say, how did anybody find out about that? Pippa was probably one of the. She's a good sounding board because she really can't give any negative feedback, but we have toys. No, but it's
dogs are always positive.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I didn't really have anyone else to feedback from. Yeah. So
I think we have one question from the audience. They want to know, Layla, are you working on another project?
Well, as you can probably tell from my many notebooks and notes apps, there's definitely always something cooking. So something else is on the horizon.
but you're not going to tell us about it yet.
Oh, yeah, it's still percolating, but it's very
Okay.
close to being on the horizon. It's very close to us. It's just on the horizon.
It's not far, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming over the hills. It's there.
And Farida, what about you? Do you have any projects on the go?
I certainly do. I have a project with Second Story Press right now, I too am working on a few picture book story ideas that are, in manuscript form with some revisions happening.
Great. So just before we close, I wanted to ask both of you about did you have a favorite book when you were a kid? Layla, who was your favorite?
Okay, well, let's see. It's like picking favorites, but okay, I'm partial towards obviously Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary, like Ramona and Beezus, Harriet the Spy, and then when I got a bit older, like everything Meg Cabot. But yeah, so lots of different books. Yeah,
I loved Harriet the Spy. What about you, Farida?
I grew up reading a ton of Enid Blyton. I pretty much covered, from Enid Blyton.
Mm-hmm.
The younger, on each level. Like from Famous Five to, as far as I can remember, Mallory Towers to it all.
Mine was the story of Ferdinand the Bull.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frank.
I was going to say that.
In the museum. I always wanted to do that.
Same here.
So thank you both so much for talking to us. This has been really fun. And I just want to tell the people watching, if you're watching this before April 30th, you can order a personalized copy of When Mom's Away from Another Story bookshop. And the link is in the comments below. And if you order April 30th by noon, you can have a personalized copy signed by Layla and Farida. And after that, you can still get a copy either from Another Story or from your favorite independent local bookshop. So thank you both very much. And I hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy the story of When Mom's Away.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Here. Bye-bye.